something I want you to sit with for a second. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my guest today got notice that all of her work, almost every contract she had, was being terminated by midnight. No severance, no warning, no plan B, just you're done. And here's the thing. She had built her entire consulting practice around federally funded contracts in the youth homelessness space. And when the administration changed and the cuts came, her phone stopped ringing almost overnight. Now you might be thinking, okay, that's a government funding story. That doesn't apply to me. But here's why it does. Because her situation was the extreme version of something that can happen to any of us. When you have one primary client, one primary channel, one primary sector, you are one phone call away from having nothing. What she did next in how she's rebuilding is exactly what we're talking about today. My name is AJ Riedel. This is Thriving Through, the podcast, where each week I have real conversations with self-employed consultants about what it really takes to build a profitable, sustainable, and fulfilling consulting practice. Today, I'm talking with Lauren Leonardis, founder of Rind and Reason, a consultant who went from being paid $15 an hour under a 1099 with no idea what her work was worth, to building a national reputation in youth homelessness consulting, to starting over and figuring out how to build a more resilient business. It's a real story and it's full of things you need to hear. Let's get into it. Lauren Leonardis, welcome to the Thriving Through podcast.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here.
The title of this podcast is called Thriving Through. So, what does thriving mean to you?
It's a great question. It makes me sort of think of the living wage calculator for some reason. I don't know if you've ever looked at that. There's a living wage calculator that sometimes I refer my clients to when they're trying to figure out how to pay young people that they're working with. And it's got like, poverty wage, acceptable like living wage, and then we talk about thriving wage because
Mhm.
living is just like you can meet all of your bare minimum things, but a thriving wage or thriving through life or any of that um looks a lot more like meeting your own goals and growing and not just living, but accelerating in some way.
Love it. Yeah. So, it's called the living wage calculator.
Yes, I haven't pulled it up in a while, but it's by I think MIT or something like that. But yeah, I think if you just Googled living wage calculator, you'd probably be able to find it.
Oh, fascinating. Oh, I cool. We're only a couple of
Right.
minutes into the podcast. I've already learned something new.
You're welcome.
So tell me, what was your path to becoming a self-employed consultant?
Another great question. My path, I think, is very different than most people who end up in this work. I started because I was homeless when I was a young adult. And I've also got a big mouth. So I went through these experiences and many different kinds of experiences from, hitchhiking around the country and train hopping to when I had my first child, losing my housing again and going through the family shelter system, and just seeing the many different ways that these systems work and don't work.
Mhm.
And so when I came back to Massachusetts, I was invited to start attending different events with someone that I had worked with at the time. And I just started advocating. I'd show up for free over and over and over again until people finally agreed to start paying me. And at first, I didn't know anything about consulting. I was extremely naive. I didn't know that, the way they were paying me was extremely inappropriate and pretty exploitative. I was being paid anywhere from $15 to maybe $20 an hour under a 1099, which is absolutely absurd. But
Right.
yeah, right? It's insane. But as I sort of grew and learned and kept showing up, I realized, oh, like I'm doing consulting work. I started taking on finally contracts outside of that person that I had been working with for a long time. And for the first time, when I got that first contract outside of that person looked at me and goes, "So what is your fully loaded rate?" And I was like, "My what?" Nobody's ever asked me what my rate is before. I've just taken what I was handed. And she had to break it down and explain to me, like, well, yeah, if you're doing consulting, you have to be able to pay for all of the expenses that go along with that. Like you're paying for eventually, your healthcare, all these things that come out of pocket. Blew my mind. And from then forward, I think I just really grew into this space. And yeah, now it's been about 10 years and I have my own business, Rind and Reason. Um, and I've been doing it ever since.
That's cool. So when she asked you your fully loaded rate, did she also hire you to do work?
Yes, I was doing some contracting work with the firm that she works for as a subcontractor.
And what was your fully loaded rate that you got paid?
Gosh, at that time, um, I feel like it was maybe around 75 to 100. It's gone up since then, but
Right.
I just didn't even know how to conceive of asking for more, knowing what I was worth.
What I find extraordinary about the story is you went from accepting 15 to 20 because that's what you were offered, and you had no framework to determine whether that was good,
Mhm. Yeah.
to having essentially a mentor and somebody who would hire you who really got you into a price at per hourly rate that was much closer to what
Yeah.
your skill set off called for.
Hmm.
That's really cool. And you said
Yeah.
it's gone up since then, which it should after 10
Right.
years.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think depending on the contract and like if there's a lot of travel or things like that involved, I'm usually around like 165 now. Um, But I mean that first person outside of the original person I worked with who asked me about my fully loaded rate, she gave me so much more than access to knowing I could name my own rate. I was doing national level work, so I was getting introduced to communities across the country, um, and it really is what sort of exploded my ability to do this. I got out from kind of being stuck under someone's wing who was being very exploitative. And the sad part of that really also is that I did really look up to that person. I learned so much from her. And I still do admire many of the things and appreciate many of the things that I learned. But she was never willing to accept or apologize for that piece either. And so we're no longer even on speaking terms. And I'm doing great. I'm thriving now, right? But it was really because of all these people who pulled me up and brought me into these spaces. And again, it's a very unique entry into this work. The interesting thing about the youth homelessness space is that we talk a lot about youth leadership, making sure young people are put first in all of those things. It ends up being somewhat toxic in a lot of ways because we put young people into positions that they don't know how to do, they don't actually have the expertise on, but everyone's so afraid to not to like tell them that. Um, but at the same time, it's what propelled me into a lot of these positions because people were like, oh, like that's a person with lived experience. We'll give her the job. So I
Mhm.
had sort of this niche in to getting these contracts and work. And now I don't even need that lived experience piece. I get the contracts because I'm good at what I do.
Right. Because you have the body of expertise and experience.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us a story or two about the biggest challenges you faced building your practice and how you overcame them.
Um, I think that the biggest challenge has been really over this past year-ish. Without, I don't want to get too political or anything, but last year I was one of the Doge cuts. I lost all of my work almost at once, because most of the contracts that I hold right now are federally funded. They are under the Housing and Urban Development Department. And so, when the administration changed over and they did some sweeping cuts of lots of different things, I got very quickly swept up in that from all of the anti-DEI stuff, which initially, like, I was still able to work, but put a lot of my work on hold. We couldn't say certain things. We couldn't meet with communities because we weren't sure what we were allowed to say. Big portions of our work and projects got cut. It was extremely traumatic. Um, and I was also in the middle of graduating college. Like I was in the final semester of getting my bachelor's degree, and I had to finish that final semester without a job.
Ooh,
Um, yeah,
that's
it
scary.
was it was really scary, but I also like I knew that I wouldn't be able to make it through if I started looking for a job either. Like I was trying to finish these classes so that I could actually graduate. And I felt like, this was going to be one more like peg in the whatever, the notch in the board, whatever, some kind of metaphor about, climbing things and proving that I'm capable of all of this to the outside
Hmm.
world. So I felt like it was really important for my career and future that I prioritize finishing this. People really came together. There was a GoFundMe. People from across the country were sending things to help me and my kids to get through all of this. Even like people put together Easter basket stuff to make sure my kids still had things like that. Um, and it got me through, so I was able to graduate. And right around that time, I did get asked to come back and recontract and continue doing HUD work. But ever since then, it's been different. We're still not allowed to say a lot of things, which is okay for me. I do feel like I like to focus more on structure and sustainability and building things in a way that meets everybody needs without having to use a lot of DEI language in order to do that. Um, but like for many of my colleagues, we've lost many of them. They've left the space because it was too difficult and too painful, and for good reason. They were, as human beings, under attack. Um, and because this is the space that I knew them in, like I might never really see them again, which is also really hard and sad. Um, During that time, I decided I needed to rebrand my consulting business, and try to expand. And so I think we're still in the overcoming it phase right now. I recently joined my area's Chamber of Commerce. I'm trying to get out there and meet more local businesses and try to grow a more diverse client base so that I'm not so reliant on these HUD contracts. Because what I do can really apply so broadly to many different organizations and businesses. Um, but it's hard to get those leads if you don't know where to look yet.
Hmm. So where you're looking is Chamber of Commerce and
Yeah,
local
Chamber of
networking.
Commerce, local networking. I mean, even this podcast, part of this is like getting out there more and being more visible to people outside of the little community of youth homelessness that I've always been in.
Hmm. Have you found it challenging for people to be able to see your expertise when they're not in the youth housing sector? I mean, you said what you do
Oh.
can apply much more broadly, but are people you talk to able to see that?
Yeah, I would say yes and no. I think if someone actually sits down and has a conversation with me, then they see it because I do know what I'm talking about. However, when I am just like putting in an application or trying to find something without that personal conversation, that becomes harder because they're asking for things like certificates in certain systems and like certain specific expertise with like different whatever frameworks that they know are supposed to work, like program management certificates and things like that. I've been a director of programs. I've built programs from scratch. I've developed youth leadership programs. I've helped fix programs that were falling apart, but I've never done a specific certificate program for that. And until recently, I didn't even have a degree. So it is hard to prove when people are looking for those specific certificates and degrees and things like that. But outside of that, I think no. People usually see that I do know what I'm talking about and I am good at what I'm talking about.
So the key is if you can get a conversation with them, an in-depth conversation, then they're able to see your abilities and your expertise and experience. And the
Hmm.
challenge is getting past that, you know, I mean, the challenge for you, I see with Chamber of Commerce is how often do you get to have an in-depth conversation like that? So much of that is surface. It's like, so, Lauren, what do you do? And then, you talk about it and their eyes glaze over and they wander off. It's getting them engaged enough so that they can say, hey, I'd like to have coffee with you.
I like to think I'm an extremely engaging person. I don't think I've come across someone who looked like they glazed over yet.
Oh, cool.
Um,
That's
and
great.
so yeah, I think especially once you say something like, "Oh yeah, like I help end youth homelessness across the country," people are like, "Wow!" And then if I lead with something like that, something exciting, people usually stay listening and engage further. I also like fun tip. Instead of making business cards, I made stickers. I wonder if I have one. I do have one right here. I made stickers because in all of those meetings and things, you can't see it very well through the screen, but my website is on there right here. And
Build
it says
systems people want to be a part of.
exactly. I made stickers because I like to be interesting and because people throw away business cards, but people love this sticker and they've been slapping it on their water bottles, the back of their laptops. I had someone I went to a college event the other day for UMass Women into Leadership, which was something that I was a part of about 5 years ago. And they invite everyone back for this big dinner every year. Um, and one of the students goes, "Oh my gosh, do you know my professor? I've been staring at this sticker all semester, thinking about how awesome it was." And I do because I go to church with her
Wow.
professor. And I went to church just last week and went to tell this connection about this interaction I had with one of her students. She was already like she already knew because that student came in the next day was like, "Oh my God, like you won't believe who I met. Like I got to meet Lauren of all people." Um, so yeah, I don't think people get very bored of me.
Cool. I love your outside the box thinking, a
Thank you.
sticker instead.
Hmm.
So you recently rebranded from Mother and Changemaker Consulting to something new.
Yeah.
So what was the moment you realized the old name wasn't working or wasn't fitting you? And tell us about the new brand that represents where you're headed.
Mother and Changemaker honestly never quite sat right, but I felt so stuck when I was trying to come up with something the first time around, and I don't feel like I had put enough roots, personal roots, into the work that I've done yet. I still was doing fantastic work and I was doing many of the same things, but I don't know that I'd found myself in it yet, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
Um, so Mother and Changemaker is just who I was. It's what I was. Um, Especially early on in my career, I had to bring my kids everywhere with me. Actually, if you Google my name, you'll still see pictures that come up of me holding my baby, um, saying hi to like the mayor of Boston, because I would bring my kids to all of my work events because I couldn't afford childcare, I couldn't afford anything. So my kids were with me. People got really used to seeing me like bouncing a baby on the hip and holding a microphone in my hand. So I was a mother and change maker. Um, I think that I really wanted to work on that and build something new for a long time. the Doge cuts kicked me into gear. I realized in that moment that like I absolutely had to expand beyond this mother and change maker. I had to be something else and be myself in the work that I was doing, even down to
Hmm.
the color. You know, I picked purple and a little purple flower because of my mother and my grandmother's favorite colors and flowers, right? Like it wasn't me. It was almost like the initial version of my business was like everything that brought me to being there. Um, when I figured out the name Rind and Reason, which is the new consulting business name, I I spent a lot of time thinking about that too, but when it clicked, it was so hard and fast and so sure. I was like, that's it. That is definitely the one. Um, I had been trying to figure out something that had to do with the color orange. It's my favorite color. It's like the color of me. Everything I own is orange, and if you see any pictures of me, they're also very orange. It's the color, right? So I knew that even my nails right now, they're painted orange. Um, I knew that I needed to find something that was somewhat related, without sounding like Operation Orange or Agent Orange or like some kind of weird toxic secret agent thing. Um, so I knew I wanted it to be adjacent, but not so specific. So that's where
Hmm.
Rind came in. And reason is, well, I'll explain where the whole name came in and you'll understand the reason part, I think. Um, as I was in that process of trying to figure it out, I had seen some article online about how people's brains trust alliteration. Like if it rhymes or it sounds the same in some way, your brain is more likely to believe it.
Hmm.
And so, um, and then not long after that, I saw something that said rhyme and reason or rhyme or reason, not a rhyme or a reason, right? Um, and I just suddenly in that moment was like, oh my God, Rind and Reason. That sounds familiar. It sounds like something you've heard before. It sounds like something that you might trust. And as I started thinking about it more, I really felt like it made so much sense. So much of what I love about my work is about structure. And when you think about an orange, it has so much very clear structure and sections and the cells and the rind is that piece that holds it all together, the framework of the whole thing. And the reason is everything inside of it. Like, why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this work? Um, and so that's sort of how we landed where we're at now in this new version of me and my work.
And how is the rebranding going?
Great. I hired a fantastic designer who helped with the logo and font and color to like really pull it all together because I wanted it to look official and real. Because it is official and real. And he did a fantastic job. Just shout out to Paul Twa. We'll fix that later. Um, but he talked through many different versions of the logo and everything, and we found something that fit just right and really does look like me and feel very connected to me. Um, and everything else has just felt right. People feel like it sounds good. They love the stickers. They think my website's really beautiful. It's rindandreason.com. Um, And yeah, I think it's going really great. It's still new. It's been since maybe, end of last year. It's part of this whole growing and expanding phase that I'm in.
Mhm.
Um, but I feel really good about it.
And are you making money? I know that's
I've
a
been
crass
making money.
question to ask, but it's the
Yes,
reality of the world.
totally. Especially in consulting, it can be so volatile, can be up and down, and contracts end on a whim sometimes. I had a community recently who I loved working with. We were making so much progress and doing fantastic. And out of nowhere, they sent an email saying, "Hi, we're ready to end this engagement." And I was like, "What?" Like, why? They never explained. I think it had to do with some internal staff changes and structural things that they were doing. Um, they did say they loved working with me and hope to see me sometime in the future. So like I don't think it was personal,
Hmm.
but that was like 10 to 15 hours a month that just ended right there and then.
Yeah.
Um,
Oof, that's a gut punch.
I know, right? I still think about it was pretty recent, so I still think about that and I'm like, damn, like I wish they would just tell me. Like, did I say something funny? I don't know. I don't think I did. But you still wonder if you get no explanation, right? Um,
Exactly.
and at the same time, I recently launched this youth action board milestone tool that I did a whole webinar about. And from that, I've had several people reach out to me. Actually, just after our meeting, I have a check-in with someone. I offered people 30 minutes of my time to, have a free like one-on-one to make sure that they knew how to use the tool and everything, and they had everything they needed. Because I really believe in making these things as accessible as possible. I don't want you to have to pay me. I cost a lot of money. Um, so I want you to be able to be successful. And if you can use the tool without me, like, awesome, good, do that. But I'm also really appreciative that that has given me some exposure, and the communities that can afford it have reached out and said they're thinking about trying to work with me in the future. Um, so in the consulting world, it's a lot of like come and go, a lot of like you get really invested in the community and the work that you're doing, and then that one's over and you do the same thing with the next one.
Yeah, it is volatile. I want to go
Yeah.
back to the tool because
Yeah.
that's something that is it an assessment or what exactly is the tool?
If you wanted to, you could find it on my website under the resources link. There's like it's like a blog kind of thing, but I'm trying to just post up different resources and tools that people can use. And it's the YAB milestone marker and tool, YAB milestone guide and marker, whatever the title, it doesn't really matter. Um, and it walks you through all of the milestones that it takes to develop a sustainable and effective youth action board, which is one of the primary things I've done with communities for the last 10 or so years. And it's actually like really easy to modify and edit, so people really could use it for other businesses and organizations and projects and whatever else too. But it was designed for youth action boards specifically. And I put it in order of there's three phases. There's, establishing some of the boundaries and guardrails, which has to do with setting up that initial structure, the base, the foundation of the work that you're doing. A lot of communities skip that part and don't realize that there is groundwork to do before you bring young people into the picture. You need to build something for them to stand in before you just ask them to come swimming.
Hmm.
Um, so it's about assessing your capacity, understanding your budget, understanding how much time you have to support young people, understanding what is the purpose. Why are you actually making this? Um, I tell people it's a lot of the like setting the container so that when you bring young people into the picture, you're not setting them up for disappointment or failure because you didn't consider where those walls were. The next phase, once you've brought those young people in, is all about creating your identity and roots, about establishing, the community, establishing what this means to the young people, creating things like visions, missions, values, understanding what impact they want to have in your work and world within the container that you've already set, so that you're not telling young people, you can do anything you want, only just to tell them, no, actually, sorry, we can't. Nope, not that one. Oh, no, nope, not that one either. Which is, so hurtful and disappointing and difficult to navigate for both the adult supporters and the young people.
And the young people,
Um,
yeah.
right. And then the final phase, phase three, is about being integrated into the community. So you've established, the first phase, you've established what this youth action boards means to the young people. You have roots. And then you can finally go represent your board and be a part of the community and show up in bigger picture work, because you know all of the things that you already know, all the things you've already established. Um, I often tell people it's a lot like if you don't do all of that work, you might be leaning the ladder up the wrong building And every step you take, you're going further in the wrong direction. You're gonna have to climb all the way back down and find the right roof before you can try again.
Mhm.
Um, so that's all one part of it. And then on the second tab, it's in a spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets. Sorry to the people who don't. The second tab is an actual tool where they can save this and make a copy of it and keep track of their progress.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And did you design it? Is it a lead generation to look at it in the sort of the business framework? Is it a lead generation tool?
I don't know
Do
what
you
that
use it
means.
that way? Oh, that means
I don't
that,
know.
I mean, like a lead magnet where you give it away. It sounds like you're giving it away to, you want people to be able to use it on their own, but even better is to find the communities that need you to help them implement it. And that's where it's
Yeah,
a lead magnet. You give them the framework
I
or
see.
the
Yes, yes, yes.
process, and then, but you know, they very quickly realize that they can't do it themselves.
My hope really is to make it as accessible as possible so that they can do it themselves. I believe it's really important, and I know a lot of these communities can't afford working with me because most of them are nonprofits, and like that's already stretched so thin. But yes, it also has brought in people who have reached out to work with me because they wanted help. They wanted a hand holding to go through that process together. Um, I really did try to pack as much detail in it so that like it almost was like I was sitting on your shoulder whispering all the answers to you. And it's still not always easy to do that by yourself. You still miss pieces. And so it is really helpful if I can work with that community too.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like a great tool for getting new clients.
Yeah, maybe. It's also very recent. It was launched. We had a whole webinar about it just last month.
And how was your webinar attendance?
It was good. I don't remember how many people came, but it was a good turnout.
But that's good.
Hmm.
Fantastic. I want to reference something you said in response to a question that I asked when we met earlier in the pre-interview. I asked you if someone asked you whether they should go into consulting, and what do you remember what you said?
No.
You said
I mean, my answer was no.
your
Yeah,
first instinct was to say, "For the love of God, don't."
exactly. Yeah, I stand by that. Um, I was just again at that college event that I went to recently, the UMass Women into Leadership. That is a program specifically for women who are trying to go into leadership. It's young college students. Many of them are most interested in doing policy work and political types of leadership movement places. Lots of them want to be lawyers, things like that. And lots of them are really interested in things like consulting because it sounds like such an appealing, like high paid profession. And one of them specifically came up to me and we talked a little extra about consulting and what it means. And I told her that, you know, I am very successful at it, but it's because I have this niche entrance. And it's not something I would recommend to other people unless you had that, unless you had some actually unique expertise that was highly sought after, that people needed to check a box, or that people were willing to spend a lot of money on, then unfortunately, you're just another pretty white girl trying to look for contracts and you're not going to get picked, right? Um, And I said that not to be mean to her, but because like it's real.
It's
Um,
true. I mean, what you're
exactly.
saying so rings true with me, and I love that you are being very direct with people about what it takes. I mean, one of my platforms is you've got to have a very narrow niche. And if it
Hmm.
aligns with your lived experience, like yours does. I mean, your
Yep.
niche came directly out of the fact that you were a homeless youth. So who
Yep.
better to work on initiatives to serve the homeless youth population than somebody who's been there? And that,
Yeah,
right from
exactly.
the get-go, that gave you an edge that very few other people had. Um, and that advice, you probably didn't want to hear that, but that advice is so spot on.
Hmm.
Let me
Yes.
ask you another question. What do you now know about the realities of consulting that you wish someone had told you before you started?
I think that where I am at now, I know and I feel good about all the things that I'm sitting in now. I wish someone had stood up for me and said something in the beginning when I was in a very exploitative situation. A big part of what I do now is teach communities how to compensate and engage young people appropriately so
Mhm.
that they don't end up screwed over like I was. That's like 99% of the conversations that I now have with communities. So I would really say, um, if someone in the beginning could have sat down with me and explained what a fully loaded rate was, what taxes were, like what you can write off and can't write off, and all of those pieces, I am fine now. So maybe it's fine. Maybe it was all meant to be because that became so much of what my contracts end up being about teaching to do better, right?
Mhm.
But baby me probably could have used that advice.
Right, right. It could have probably moved a little faster if you'd known that at the beginning.
Right. But at the same time, I think that is part of my lived experience. Like my lived experience is not just having been a young person in homelessness, but it's also having been a young person who experienced homelessness who's starting to do this kind of work.
Yes. And has not just starting, has been successful at it. I
Yeah.
mean, you have an incredible story.
Thank you.
I want to switch to the future. Where do you see your business in the next 3 to 5 years?
My hope is that I've been able to expand and diversify the work that I'm doing, and that I've figured out how to do that in a way where, local businesses are reaching out and wanting to work with me for different things. I mean, I do a lot more than just developing these things that I've done, right? Like I do focus groups, I help get client feedback, I can help build continuous quality improvement plans. Like there's so much in consulting. Like I feel like consultants wear a bajillion hats, and
Hmm.
somehow we're capable of just, throwing one on and off in the same meeting. Um, and my hope is that I can do more of that for other places and community members and businesses and all of that. Um, and yeah, we'll see. We'll see if that happens. I
What do
feel
you
like it
think
will.
the what do you think the biggest challenge you're going to face is going to be in getting there to get see that vision come true?
One of them being just one of the things I already mentioned about people wanting you to know some of the like official certificate things or official frameworks. I taught myself everything that I do. I made most of it up. And it works. It's correct. I'm 100% sure of that. But it's not like I don't use a SWOT analysis. I have my own system. Oh my gosh, I can't think of the word. Strategic planning tool that I use. Um, People want me to have like, things like that. And I think it might be difficult trying to break into more spaces without having those things. Um, and then adjusting my rate expectations. So with doing federal or contract work at that level, I am aware that I can ask for more money than I can from a local business. I didn't know that a month ago. And I lost a contract because a different local consultant asked for less than me. Um, and I think that's going to be the case a lot more with other local businesses. So I need to try and figure out like, how do I assess when I need to ask for more or less? Like, how do you figure that out on the local scale, which is very different than federal contracting?
Right. I would say, if you were a student in my program, I would say don't adjust your pricing. Find the ideal clients who can afford you at the higher rate. What sets those what are those local businesses that can and are willing to afford it? So maybe it's not the not nonprofits. Maybe it's, that's what's maybe some of the homework to do is
Yeah,
only
totally.
work
And
with the
I
people that can
agree.
afford you.
I think that there is a balance though. And to get your in with local people, it'd be good to like just get anyone that you can. And it wasn't that big of a cut. Like I would have been fine with doing it for a local program at that rate.
Hmm.
Um, but it means I didn't get that contract at all. And so instead of, having that work even at a smaller rate, it means I just don't get any $0 instead of some dollars.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I do want to build towards that, and that is ultimately the hope. But I think that it's almost like, when people start by giving like freebies of their product so that people talk about it and they're like, oh, like this thing's so great. I need that a little bit. Like, I need some of the local people to be like, yeah, she's so great, so that
Hmm.
I start getting more of those connections.
Yeah. So taking it something at a lower rate can be a strategic move because
Exactly.
if you tie it in with getting social proof, like
Exactly. It's about
they
that
know
social
they're,
capital.
yes, exactly. Because the more social proof you have, the less they're going to ask you for those certifications and what external frameworks do you use, and the more likely they're going to be to trust that your framework is better than anything you could have picked from someone else created.
Exactly. And that's what I already have in the youth homelessness space. People know me. They recognize the names of the places I've already worked with. They recognize the things I've already done because they're in this little bubble of youth homelessness. And so I got by for 10 years without a degree, without any of those certificates, without any official anything. And now I think stepping outside of that bubble, it's almost like I need to build up some of that credibility again.
Right.
Not from
So I have
scratch this time at least, but.
so I have a question, and it's
Hmm.
it's a little more of a challenging question than I would normally ask, but I'm curious, is there not are there not wanting to rely on Doge and the government contracts, is there not business in that sector that you could do without the volatility of the government situation and the restrictions?
In the youth homelessness field, you mean? No, there's
No.
not. Because
Okay.
unless you were able to find programs that do this work and do not receive any state or federal funding. But it's like a trickle down sort of thing, right? So if I do have some contracts that are directly with a community, however, they're still paying me with federal money.
Right,
So
right. I
it's
get
still
it.
money that they got from HUD. And even within that contract, it says like this work is dependent on that we continue having this funding from HUD. If we don't have this, like we will have to cut it.
Right.
Um,
I was asking because you've got this such incredible reputation and body of work and proven expertise in that very narrow niche that it seems a shame to kind of walk away from that and have to do, because basically you're kind of starting all over in a new niche. But it sounds like if you don't want to be dependent on government, and at this point in time it makes all the sense in the world not to be, um,
totally.
then you really do have to move away and find a new path.
Yeah, and I think that I'll just say I don't want to move away from that work. What I want to do is braid these things together so that I still have and still can do all of the things that I care about in that field and can still support all these communities. Like I love my communities. I can't say enough. Like I really do. I feel like I become a part of it and I want to see them thrive just as much as, see, there's that word again, thrive. I want to see them thrive and succeed just as much as they want that. And I work with some of them for years, so we become close, we become friends. Um, so I don't want to step away from that work, but I do want to sort of layer in some other work. So if there are other big cuts where suddenly this half of my life just drops off,
Hmm.
I'm not left with zero. I don't have
Right.
nothing. I have the ability to sort of try to expand some of this other stuff that I've brewed.
Got it. Because you went through that once where
Yep.
almost
It
overnight it's like screech, come to a
was
screeching
overnight.
halt. Yeah.
No, let me tell
Yeah.
you, AJ, we got the notice at 3 p.m., 3 in the afternoon, that we were done by midnight.
Oh my God.
And so I was up until midnight saying goodbye to my communities, giving them everything I could, being like, I'm so sorry. Like, I spent the last hour writing all of this down for you here. This is what I would have told you, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, we were done by midnight.
Oh, wow. That's brutal. I
Oh,
can
yeah.
totally understand why you want to move, you know,
Expand.
add.
I
It's
want to
not move,
expand.
it's add. But
Yes,
move into a space that is not dependent on government funding. I can
exactly.
totally get
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Well, as we near the end of the podcast, I have one last really important question. How can listeners connect with you if they want to learn more about you and your work?
That's a great question. My website would be the first recommendation, or you can look me up on LinkedIn. But my website has a little contacts button, and you can go check out that milestone tool I was talking about if you want to. But that's rindandreason.com, or search Lauren Leonardis on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you'll find me.
Okay, so it's rhyme and reason.
Rind, Rind, and
Okay.
reason. Hmm.
Okay. Rind and reason. And for those of you listening or watching, the link will be in the show notes as well. So, Lauren, it has been delightful to talk to you today. I really appreciate it. And for those of you listening or watching, until next time, keep thriving through. Thank you. Seriously. This conversation was exactly the kind of honest, no polish look at consulting that this show is built for. What I want you, the listener, to take away from today is this. Your niche isn't just a marketing strategy, it's your moat. Lauren didn't build a national reputation by casting a wide net. She built it by showing up over and over in a very specific space and letting her lived experience become her expertise. That's what made her irreplaceable. And if you heard the part about nearly losing everything overnight and thought, I need to make sure that can't happen to me, then do something about it this week. Look at your client pipeline. Look where your revenue is coming from. If it's coming from one client or one source of leads, you have work to do. Lauren's new consulting home is at rindandreason.com. You'll find her Youth Advisory Board Milestone 2 tool there as well, and a contact button if you want to reach out to her about working with her. That link is in the show notes. If today's episode gave you something useful, please share it with another consultant who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe or follow on whatever platform you're listening or watching on. It keeps us in your feed and it helps this show grow. Until next time, keep thriving through.